Government is out of control, and those who love liberty and value individual and states' rights must stand up to it. But by week's end, Paul again drew criticism for his views, this time by accusing the president of too harshly criticizing BP for its role in the Gulf oil spill.
What I don't like from the president's administration is this sort of, I'll put my boot heel on the throat of BP. I think that sounds really un-American in his criticism of business.
Dr. Paul wondered publicly Friday where his honeymoon was, and later, citing exhaustion and an unwillingness to answer any further questions about his stand on civil rights and the role of government, canceled his appearance here. But there are questions about his principles left unanswered, like whether his belief in limited government means he opposes, say, the minimum wage, the ban on child labor laws, or workplace safety rules. Perhaps the bigger question is whether this fresh new face in politics is now a weaker candidate than he was Tuesday night. I want to turn now to our guest, the chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, Senator John Cornyn, and his counterpart, chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, Senator Robert Menendez. Welcome both of you this morning to Meet the Press.
Thank you.
Senator Cornyn, Rand Paul's spokesman sent a statement to Meet the Press this morning indicating that he didn't want to be on the program because he wanted to avoid the liberal bias of the media. And I wonder what your view is, whether you think this is liberal bias that's ensnared him this week, or whether it's the articulation of his own views about the limited scope of government that had senior Republicans in the party telling him to avoid the national spotlight.
Well, Dr. Paul's new to running for public office, and I think it's Bob's experience, I'm sure my experience, that you see novice candidates occasionally stumble on questions. I think he's clarified his position, but I think he's done the right thing. As much fun as this is, David, to be here with you, I think he needs to be talking to the voters back in Kentucky, the people who actually will be able to cast a ballot on whether he's elected as the next United States Senator or not.
Well, obviously being here is not as important as the larger point, which is, don't you think this is fair game? Questions about his views about the limit and the scope of government.
Well, I do think that's a fair topic, and I'm sure you'll be hearing extensively from him and all the candidates over the next 6 months. But the fact of the matter is Rand Paul's leading his opponent in the general election by 25 points.
You don't think he's a weaker candidate today than he was Tuesday?
He's leading by 25 points. I'll have to let the numbers speak for themselves. But I think we will have a discussion about the role of government in our lives. There are too many Americans, or many Americans, I should say, who believe that government has simply gotten too aggressive, it spends too much, it borrows too much, and we've had too many government takeovers. I think he will speak directly to that, and I think people will respond favorably.
Do his views concern you?
I don't know what all his views are. I've watched this exchange, but the fact of the matter is I think he's doing the right thing by talking to the people in Kentucky.
You have heard his views, and it's not as if he hadn't thought this out. He's got very specific views about even the Civil Rights Act. He took issue with only one of the titles in the Civil Rights Act, so it's not as if this was some sort of ambush. He's thought a good deal about this. He's articulate about what he believes. You've heard that. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, he's clarified his views that he's opposed to any kind of discrimination, period, and I applaud him for clarifying that view. I just think that every time you have a citizen who decides to run for public office who's not a professional politician, that occasionally they're going to stumble. Sometimes their philosophy, when you start to articulate it and carry it to its logical end, they have to come back and say, well, you know what, we just have to temper that with experience. But his view is that private businesses should not be subject to a government mandate, even about discrimination. Is that something you agree with, or do you think that's beyond the pale of mainstream conservative views? Well, David, what I heard him say is he supports the Civil Rights Act. He clarified his views, and I think that should be the end of it.
Senator Menendez, your take on what you've seen in the last few days?
When you start to articulate it and carry it to its logical end, they have to come back and say, well, you know what, we just have to temper that with experience. But his view is that private businesses should not be subject to a government mandate, even about discrimination. Is that something you agree with, or do you think that's beyond the pale of mainstream conservative views? Well, David, what I heard him say is he supports the Civil Rights Act. He clarified his views, and I think that should be the end of it.
Senator Menendez, your take on what you've seen in the last few days?